Okay, thank you. It is Tuesday, May 2nd at 7:30 PM. The first item on the agenda is roll call.
Rosado,
Here.
Atack, Stark,
Here.
Jansen,
Here.
Wolf,
Here.
Salvati,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
O'Brien,
Here.
Callahan,
Here.
Meitzler,
Here.
Mueller, Ewer,
Here.
Saron,
Here.
and McFadden.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. We'll move on then to item 2, which is approval of the minutes for January 10th, January 24th, and April 18th of 2017. That's for the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments on that? Can I get a motion, please?
Second?
Motion by Janzik, second by Stark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Those will go on the consent agenda. Next item is items added, removed, or changed. I don't believe we have any. Okay? I do want to make one change. We do need to have an executive session tonight, and that'll be for the purpose of property acquisition. So we're going to make that item 11A. Okay? We'll move on then to item 4, and that is matters from the public for items that are not on the agenda. So if you'd like to address us for an item that is not on the agenda, we would take that opportunity right now. If you want to address us for something that is on the agenda, you can address us during the appropriate item that's on the agenda. I would like to mention that if you're here to speak to us about the initial land use proposal for the Campana building, there are specific guidelines that we'd like to follow. Alderman Stark will explain those when we get to that item. Next item then will be ordinance number 5, or item number 5, which is ordinance 17-29. That's the annexation of the remainder of the property at 451 Pine Street. Memo came out by Community Development, Scott Buning. Alderman Stark?
Yes. The property at 451 Pine Street, again, is one of those little islands of property that Scott has been working very hard to annex into the city limits. And so this is, the staff sent a letter to the state to annex the remaining parcel of land to the city. So we received a petition to annex from the executor, personal administrator, and we agreed with the other annexations, and the city would like to prepare the plat annexation and handle it with the paperwork necessary. So our alternatives are to annex the property or not annex the property. Again, as in all of our little islands that we annex in, the pro is just to have, again, not those little random islands outstanding. The cons, there aren't any cons, and the budget impact is about $325 for the plat of annexation and recording costs, and there's no additional impact on staffing other than paperwork. So does anyone have any questions about this particular property at 451 Pine? Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by McFadden? Oh,
He's impersonating me again.
again, you threw your voice so well. Meitzler, second by Salvati. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Consent agenda?
Sure.
Okay, we'll go on then to item number 6, which is ordinance 17-30, annexing the remainder of the property at 908 Carlisle Road. Again, memo out of Community Development, Scott Buning, and Alderman Stark.
Okay, this is another very similar piece of property, although this is the old railroad right-of-way. This is located at 908 Carlisle. We received a petition from the property owner to annex this into the city of Batavia. And so, again, the alternatives are we can annex it or not annex it. The pros are, again, we don't have a little island and it's going to consolidate it all into one parcel for the property owner. There are no cons. The budget impact is $225, and the staffing impact is there's none other than the paperwork that will be filed. So does anyone have any questions about this one of Scott? Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Chanzit, second by O'Brien,
Second.
second by Meitzler. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Carried.
carries.
We'll go to consent agenda on that also. Item 7, ordinance 17-31, annexing the property located at 1012 Main Street. Again, memo by Scott Buning out of Community Developments, and Alderman Stark.
Okay, this is a property that has one of our older utility agreements. The property owner signed an agreement in exchange for a connection to the city sewer system in 1995. The agreement required annexation once the property was contiguous, which it is at this time. The property owners, Doug and Jeanette Siegler, have submitted a petition to annex as part of the agreement at the request of our staff. This property has city service, sewer service already. Water and electric are not close to the property, and the prior agreement does not require connection with any specific time. The agreement also does not require any specific payment of fees other than utility connection fees and payment of their fair share of sidewalk improvements if they occur in the future. As we agreed with the other annexations, the city will prepare the plat of annexation and handle all the paperwork necessary, and it's going to be in Ward 2 after annexation. So our alternatives, again, are to either annex or do not annex. The pros is we'll see a small increase in property taxes because, as well as a head tax because of after the 2020 census because of this annexation. There's no cons. The budget impact is $225, and there's no additional staffing impact. Does anyone have any questions about this one? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Chances, second by Meitzler. Oh, my God. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Carried, we'll go to consent agenda on that also. Item 8, ordinance 17-32, ordinance annexing and zoning remainder of properties at 914 Town Avenue, 970 Millview Drive, 1414, 1434, 1454 Newton Avenue. Again, this memo came out of Community Development, Scott Buning, Alderman Stark.
Okay, this is again a bunch of old railroad right-of-ways that were little islands along Bernadette and Millview. And again, Scott has done a terrific job of trying to locate these little islands and close them up so that they're all part of Batavia proper. And it's so interesting to see how they're just so randomly disconnected from things in the middle of people's backyards. So again, we contacted the owners. They were unincorporated before, and now we received 5 petitions to annex from various property owners. And again, we said we'd do all the paperwork. It's zoned R0 upon annexation with possible rezoning to R-1L at a future date. The properties are going to be in Ward 2 after annexation. So again, the pros are we close up the islands. The cons, there are no cons. The budget impact for all the recording costs and plats of annexation are $825 for this, and there's no additional staffing impact. Anyone have any questions? Marty?
I just had a quick, I asked Joel beforehand, but maybe you might know. The remaining parcels that are not annexed, do we still own them, or have they been sold to the adjoining properties?
There's a variety of properties. The city does own some of the railroad properties on the east side of the center line of the railroad, and we have not sold those yet. We did try selling those unsuccessfully, so we do still own those. We'll probably make another attempt to do that. The parcel on Brandywine is for sale along with the adjacent right-of-way. That is, been on the market, but we haven't had anybody officially asked to purchase that yet, so that is still there. This annexation, while it does take out 5 pieces, there will be a number of still donut holes. We're kind of creating more donut holes as we do some of this, but we'll come back to you with those at another date to talk about how do we want to or not want to address those.
The one on Brandywine, you're talking the full lot?
The full lot, yes. Yeah, and we have an adjacent railroad right-of-way that spans about 4 or 5 lots in there also that's for sale with it.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
I have one.
Ellen?
Just a clerical thing. In, I believe, several of these ordinances, I just went back through and looked at them. The Fisher is listed in there instead of Savage.
I apologize for that. We
that
will swap that out at the council level.
council.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
I was aware of that. We couldn't get the change before we had it posted, unfortunately, so apologize for that.
Anyone else? Great. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Callahan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, that'll go to consent agenda also with the changes as necessary. Okay, next item then is the initial land use proposal review for the Campana mixed-use redevelopment at 901 North Batavia Avenue. The petitioner is EREG Development. Memo again came out of Community Developments, Joe Strassman. Before we get started with this, I do want to recognize the fact that Alderman Atack did enter the meeting at roughly 7:35, so all 14 of the elected aldermen are here this evening. Point of clarification, or just to be clear, Alderman McFadden wasn't able to be at the meeting last night when we were all sworn in that received the latest election results. He was elected as the alderman, he just wasn't able to be here last night, so I guess technically he is an alderman, but just not sworn in at this point.
Yeah, he should probably be sworn in at some point.
Yes, that'll be,
Do it?
Plan to do it the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
okay,
right, which would be the time to do it.
right. I just wanted to make that clear to everybody. Okay, so the reason why I think everybody's here tonight is the next item on the agenda. And I do want to make a couple of things very clear before Alderman Stark explains the process. And that is, no votes will be taken tonight. This is an initial land use plan that the petitioner can or cannot elect to do, where he would come to the city council, or the committee as it is, and present what they would propose to do with this building. It is mainly intended for the petitioner to explain to us his intent, for staff to explain to us as the committee what it is that they've been working on with the petitioner. We will take up to 30 minutes, roughly, of public comment. I know that's going to be very difficult, so we need to make sure we don't try to be redundant. And we'd like to hear what you have to say. But again, this meeting is mostly so that we can discuss between ourselves. Because of the Open Meeting Act, we cannot have discussion outside of this room together as a group. So this is really meant for us to work, to hear what the developers got to say, hear what staff has been working on, and then us discuss what it is that we see favorable or not so favorable about this project. And one of the reasons why we have that in our code, that that's a possibility to do, is so that the developer, not only so that the citizens know what's up, but also so that the developer doesn't spend a lot of time, money, and effort if this isn't something that we want to see done. And so our staff doesn't spend a lot of time, money, and effort if this isn't something we want to see done. So it used to be called the heart attack test, but we figured out we needed to have a better name than a heart attack test, because, you know, you just don't want something to get all the way down the process, you know, through a whole long process, and then get to a meeting and everybody have a heart attack about it. You know, nobody heard about this, you know, so we try very hard to keep everything out in the public and have some early comments on it and early communication between the committee and staff and the developer. Please, no clapping, no booing, no cheering. If this goes any further than tonight, and I can't say it will, I can't say it won't, if this goes any further, there'll be plenty of public hearings with the Plan Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then there'll be public meetings with the Committee of the Whole, and then there'll be public meetings with the City Council before anything happens, and there'll be plenty. If you don't get a chance to talk tonight, that's okay, because there'll be plenty of meetings after this one where we'll all have time to talk and say what you need to say. So let's please be courteous and respectful of each other, and we'll start this item out. Alderman Stark.
Thank you. Okay, so the petitioner is at the podium, and I'm assuming you're from Evergreen Real Estate Group?
I am.
And if you could please state your name for the record?
David Block, Director of Development for Evergreen Real Estate Group.
Terrific, thank you so much. And so I guess we'll start out with your presentation so that we can hear more about your proposed project, and then we'll go from there into questions
Great.
from council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city staff, neighbors from Batavia, Geneva, elsewhere around here. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you tonight. As I mentioned, my name is David Block. I'm the Director of Development for the Evergreen Real Estate Group based in Chicago. In the interest of time, I'm not going to introduce some of the folks we have here from our team, but we have our architect, we have our property management folks, and we have some of our internal team members as well. This is the redevelopment of a Batavia landmark. Just very briefly, Evergreen Real Estate Group, you may have seen us on the front page several times of the Herald and other local papers out here for the redevelopment of the former St. Charles Hospital in Aurora. That project has been a big success and a major economic contributor to the east side of Aurora. We care a lot about historic preservation, and so the building on the bottom right there is a former ice cream factory in Milwaukee that we are now working on. We also care an awful lot about design, and so the mayor of the city of Chicago selected us out of a number of firms to help develop new public libraries and housing together on 2 different sites in the city of Chicago. The Campana building is extraordinary. It's a wonderful building. It has a fascinating history. You all probably know that the building was built in 1936 as a hand lotion factory. It was Campana's Italian Balm. Soon the name was replaced during the Second World War just with Campana Balm. Ernest Oswalt was the building's founder. And I know some of you living here today have family ties to the Oswalt family, and so they really were visionaries in building this building. If you haven't been inside, it really is an extraordinary opportunity. That's on the left there is inside the tower. There is a magnificent staircase. It is a wonderful example of Art Deco and Art Moderne architecture. The front entrance is in the middle there. You can see the brick, the terracotta surrounds, the aluminum, creating a very streamlined look. But as with many buildings of its vintage, there are increasingly physical challenges with this building. The masonry has not been comprehensively tuck-pointed and cleaned in many years. So if you look carefully, if you walk around the outside of the building, and it's a little hard to see this from Route 31 and from Fabian Parkway, but if you get up close to the building, there are portions of this building that are crumbling. After now, 80 plus years of being exposed to the elements, the building really does need a comprehensive construction program in order to bring it back and allow it to provide life as an important monument for the entire Fox River Valley for the next 90 years. And so that is part of what we are addressing there. One of the major challenges of this building is the simple scale of it. It's 131,000 square feet. And our contractor pointed out to us, and I hadn't really thought about this, but it's 618 feet from stem to stern, if you think about it that way. He compared it to a 60-story building lying on its side, and that's effectively what it is. It is a very long building. It's also a very deep building, 100 foot deep, with ceilings that are 16 feet 6 on all 3 of the floors there. And so a redevelopment plan for this building faces a number of key challenges. The most obvious of these challenges is there are no windows in this building. This building was designed as a factory building using only glass block. And so from any redevelopment perspective, whether it's for an office use or a residential use, figuring out what to do with that glass block is critical. And particularly if this building is going to abide by the historic preservation standards, what's promulgated by the National Park Service as the Secretary for the Interior Standards for Historic Preservation. Because this building is listed on the National Register, it's critical that that is part of the program. You have to figure out a solution to deal with the glass block and find a way to make this building usable. The primary views up from Route 31, up from Fabian Parkway, the building really is very dramatic as it sits back on the site. And so preserving the views up from the street, that great lawn with what the historic preservationists call the racetrack in front. It's an oval drive that now has parking on it. But again, if you look at it up close, it's in pretty tough shape. The asphalt's a little beat up and it really needs to be resurfaced, but it needs to be treated in an appropriate manner. And finally, if you look at the building carefully, there is cell phone equipment all over the tower. And the wonderful thing about the technology that we live in today is that it's important to have those cell phone antennas because otherwise we don't have service. But from a historic preservation perspective, they are very challenging. So what are we proposing at the Campana? We are proposing a mixed use, mixed income redevelopment program. So we're proposing a mix of residential and commercial uses here. You may know that the site is zoned mixed use, and so what we are proposing, we believe, is fully consistent with the City of Batavia's ongoing zoning, and we'll come back and talk to that. So we're proposing 80 units of housing in this development. Of those 80 units, 20% of the units, or 16 units, will be full market rate units without income restrictions, and tenants will pay whatever the current market rent is in Batavia, Geneva. And right now, those market rents range from about $1,200 a month to $1,600 a month, and in some cases, they're even higher than that. So what we're proposing is for the remainder of the units, 80% of those units are going to be income restricted. And we can talk a little bit about what that means in a couple of minutes. We have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And of that 31,000 square feet, we're proposing to retain approximately 32,000 square feet of it as commercial, retail, or recreational space. So about 25% of the entire complex. And again, we're preserving the entire building and the grounds to national historic standards. We are not proposing to build any new buildings outside of the building's footprint. And I need to emphasize that again. We're not proposing to build anything else on the site but to preserve the existing building. So what does it look like when you have an apartment that doesn't have windows in it? Well, one of the advantages that we have in this building is we have such high ceilings. And so we've designed a few views of the apartment complex to give you a sense of what it would be like to be inside one of these units today. I have with us today Dennis Langley, who is our architect from Weiss Langley Weiss downtown. And Dennis has proposed what we think is an incredibly creative solution to this. So if you look on the drawing, one of the things about this building is that the windowsills are about to here. The windowsills are about 4.5 feet above the floor slab. And so what that space does is it allows you to put windows, operable windows, below the sill that holds the glass block, and those windows can be operable and admit fresh air into the units without damaging the rest of the glass block. And I should note here that in conversations that we've had with the State Historic Preservation Office, the people who are ultimately the keepers of the historic flame in Illinois and as part of the national program, they have said that this very clever approach is the closest that they have seen to a viable, approvable scheme for the redevelopment of this building in the many schemes that they've seen for the building over the years. Right now, we are looking from the second floor down into the living room of a 2-story, 2-bedroom loft unit. So you can see you're up about 8 feet, and so we're standing, a 5-foot tall person. So we're looking down 13 feet into a 16-foot tall living space with a huge wall of glass block and plenty of living space. And so we think this is a very attractive apartment as a way to reuse this building. This is from the bedroom on the second floor, so I just stepped back a few feet from the previous view. Again, you can see that there is an opening from that second floor bedroom down into the living space, but it provides some privacy into the bedroom there as well, but you also get light and fresh air into there. And this is a view looking into the apartment from the central corridor. So we're gonna make this building what's called a double-loaded building. So in the middle of the building, we'll put a new corridor that is facing east and west, with apartment entrances off of that. And so as you enter into these buildings, you're entering in with a relatively low hallway, and you can see into the very high ceiling space toward the front of each unit. I know you can't read this plan, but this again gives you a scale, a sense of the scale of the building. Again, 618 feet from end to end. On the left side here, you can see is where the existing mattress store is. And the idea is that that mattress store and most of the recreational commercial uses that are in the west wing of the building will stay in the building. So there is a volleyball training facility back there. There's a personal trainer, a personal fitness facility. There's a chiropractor in that back office space, and the mattress facility will stay. Other commercial facilities in the building will move out as part of the redevelopment of the project. Our preservation approach here, again, focuses on windows. So inserting windows, and again, on the first floor, because those windows are low and they are behind the foundation plantings, if you look at the front of this building, and here you can see it a little bit on the side here, there are shrubs that are along the windowsills on the first floor. We'll restore that line of shrubs, and those shrubs will hide these new windows that we're inserting. So from Route 31, what you'll see will look exactly what it looks like today, but we will clean and restore the condition of the building so it will look like what it looked like in 1936, except that we are keeping the north and south wings, which were added in the 1960s. Again, we're restoring the racetrack, the oval in the front of the building. We're providing parking along there. There's parking there now. We're going to try to increase the capacity of that. And we're restoring and repairing the masonry. If you go in the back of the building, so if you come off of Fabian Parkway and you're driving over to the volleyball facility, the back of the building is in particularly difficult shape. There's a lot of cracks running up and down the masonry. And we are actually going to end up rebuilding a significant part of that because as soon as we start to peel that away, it's going to crumble. And so we need to restore that back masonry to its original condition, largely through a program of rebuilding. Here's one more view. We have a lot more leeway on the back side of the building because the historic preservation people allow us to insert windows into the glass block there, whereas on the east side, on the front of the building, they don't. So you'll see on either side of the glass block, we're inserting these large panes of clear glass that will be operable windows that will essentially give people living on the back side of the building, on the west side of the building, clear views in addition to the big bright pane of glass block. So no lower windows here, just windows on either side of the glass block field. This is important, so I want to go through this quickly in the interest of time, but I'm happy to come back to this question at the end. You know, this building has been sitting seriously underutilized for probably close to 40 years. The current approach, and I should acknowledge Frank Mayers and Tim Ward and Tim's brother and some of their other partners are here tonight. They have been great stewards of this building. They've owned this building since 2006, I believe. They have been good stewards of the property. They have done the maintenance to keep the building functioning, to keep the building in reasonably good shape. But their economic approach cannot provide the economic impulse to provide a long-term rehab solution to the building. Our full construction program here is $20 million. And the total project cost, including acquisition of the land, paying our professional team, paying for financing and so forth, is $30 million. Okay, so I want to emphasize here that if the market had a solution for this building, it would have provided it already. The building has been underutilized for years and years, but this is a strong market. This is Batavia, this is Geneva. If the market knew what to do with this building, it would have provided it. So essentially, if you take out the affordable housing tools that we use, if you take out the rules that we have to follow, which includes paying Davis-Bacon wages, so full union scale wages plus union benefits, let's say you don't have to do that. You've got a non-union crew that's going to build this, so maybe that's worth 20%. So maybe you're only spending $16 million on the renovation program instead of 20. But you're still going to have to pay to acquire the building. You're still going to have to pay an architect and attorneys. You're still going to have to pay interest on a construction loan. So maybe your program is only $26 million. Let's say that this were a fully market rate development, so 100% market rate units. If I ran the market rate rents as I'm doing it now, I'm generating about $900,000 a year in residential, what's called net operating income. So after paying my expenses, paying the property taxes, paying the cost of mowing that enormous lawn, paying to heat and cool the common spaces, I'm only generating $900,000 a year. That allows me to support a first mortgage of about $10.5 million. I can generate about $3.5 million by using this federal historic tax credit tool. So I've got $14 million. As a developer, I need to put in $12 million of my own money in order to make this work as a market rate program. If I'm generating $900,000 a year in net operating income and servicing a $10.5 million first mortgage, my best case return on equity is 5.7% cash on cash or 3% internal rate of return. No real estate investor will ever make that investment. There's not enough of a return in order to justify that. Okay, so the returns are insufficient, which is why the market has not responded to this building. So what do you do when the market can't provide a solution? You use federal tax credits. And so we're proposing the use of historic tax credits We're also proposing the use of housing tax credits. There's a program called, it's kind of an unfortunate name, LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credits. And that allows you to provide housing for individuals and families at or below 60% of the area median income. We're also using state tax credits. Illinois has its own affordable housing tax credit program. And then there are other tools that we have available to us, like through Kane County, there's an allocation of federal home dollars. There's something called the Federal Home Loan Bank that we're using. It's important to note here that we are not requesting a single dollar of locally sourced tax revenue from any taxing body, City of Batavia, City of Geneva, Kane County. None of the funding for this building is coming from any local taxes generated here in the area. Yes, it's coming from your federal taxes, but that would apply wherever you live. So what are the area median incomes here? I have the chart up there. You can see that the area median incomes at 60% of the area median, which is the income limit for what we're proposing to do, ranges from $33,180 for a single person up to $47,400 for 4 people. So a household, maybe a couple and 2 kids, or a single mom and 3 kids. And so if you look at 2015 Batavia census data, it tells you how many people are living at each income band, how many households actually. And if you total it up and include all of the households up to just under $50,000, that is 2,522 households, or 26% of all of the households in the city of Batavia would qualify for this housing. And I think that is a very important thing for everybody to understand. That's just Batavia. We haven't run the numbers in Geneva. The figures in Geneva were not that much lower. They were a little bit lower. I think it was around 22 or 23%. But there is an appreciable population of people living in this community who would be eligible for this and would benefit from this development. One other thing around the economics of this project that it's very, very important to note. Based on the income limits that I've just described, if you look, and because all the school districts in Illinois need to publish their salary data every year. So if you look at the data for District 304, 97 out of 419 teachers, so 23% of the teachers, based on last year's information, would qualify for housing in this development if they were the sole earner and they had 3 kids. Now look up the data yourself. 64 out of 430 teachers in District 101, so 15%, would qualify if they were the sole earner with 3 kids. So I don't know if that suggests that District 101 pays its teachers better. I'm not sure what it is, but
Come on, we were doing really good. Now we're getting out of hand, and the problem, if we get out of hand, is you can't hear what's being said, and we can't hear what's being said. So the meeting will go nowhere, and we'll have to start all over again some other time. So let's not do that. Let's be respectful and let the gentleman present what he's presenting.
thank you. If you look at many other jobs in the environment, ranging from preschool teachers to certified nursing assistants at the Homestead or any of the other retirement communities around here, even entry-level nurses, nursing assistants, dental assistants, certainly retail jobs, all of those folks would qualify for housing based on the income limits at this development. So in terms of our overall program, and I'm not going to go through all of this in detail, but we have proposed a range of income limits here. So again, as I mentioned, we have 16 unrestricted or market rate units that will be paying the full rent, so $1,200 to $1,600. And then we have a range of units that are ranging from 30% of area median income, which includes a number of folks in what's called the state referral network, which is a state network of people, mostly with disabilities, whether it's mental health issues or developmental disabilities, who need housing. And those folks come with their own services. And so we have 8 units, so 10% of the program set aside for those folks. And then we have units at 50% of area median. So when I say rental subsidy, it is basically the tenant pays 30% of their income, whatever that income is, and the rental subsidy, which in this case would be provided by the Aurora Housing Authority would provide the difference between whatever the rent is at that level and what the tenant can pay. And then we have a number of units that don't have that rental subsidy. So only 25 of the units, so about 30% of the program, have that rental subsidy attached. The rest of the unsubsidized units, the tenants pay whatever the rent is at that level. So there's no subsidy attached to those units. One of the things that's important here is high-quality property management. And at Evergreen Real Estate Group, we manage about 7,000 units in 8 states around the country. We take a holistic approach to managing properties. And actually, the image that you see on the right there is an actual image, that's not a computer rendering, of one of our units at the Aurora St. Charles Hospital. So it's a beautiful unit in a beautiful building, and we restored a lot of the historic features there. Our approach focuses on 4 key things: the safety, security, and satisfaction of our residents, the accountability to the community, and the economic integration of our developments into the community. So buying local goods and services wherever possible, regulatory compliance, because we have an awful lot of strings that are attached to the funding that we use, and performance for our investors and our shareholders. And so that is the 4 pillars of our property management business. And we have our property management director here tonight if there are questions. Very quickly, because I want to wrap this up and provide opportunities for questions. This is a mixed-use development, as we noted. So many of the local businesses in this building are contributors to the local economy. We'll maintain about 15 permanent jobs in the building. The housing uses in the main part of the building and the commercial uses are in the south wing and the west wing. And as mentioned, this is mixed-use zoning, and so this does comply with what the zoning and the comprehensive plan suggest. The benefits of this project. So this is the long-term preservation of an important landmark for Batavia, Geneva, and the entire Fox River Valley. It provides housing for a range of families and singles, including those at living wage and lower wage jobs, for people with disabilities, and for people who can pay full market rent. As noted, it maintains about 15 permanent jobs, and it will create about 100 construction jobs over a year-long construction cycle. And more than likely, there will be an increase in property taxes. And that, again, this is important. We are projecting almost a 50% increase in the property taxes that this building will pay. And so this building now pays taxes to the city of Batavia, to District 304, and to the Park District up there. We are not asking for a tax abatement or exemption. We are expecting to continue to pay property taxes, and we're expecting the assessment of this building to increase as a result of our development. There are obviously challenges to developing this building. We have heard loud and clear that this intersection at Route 31 and Fabian Parkway is a very challenging intersection, in part because of the volumes of traffic, in part because of the orientation of the bridge over the river. And so working on pedestrian and traffic safety there, particularly we have heard a strong desire to build sidewalks to connect the building over to Allen Drive, because the kids in this building will most likely go to the Western Avenue School. We're not expecting a huge number of kids. We're expecting probably on the order of 20 to 30 kids living in this building. They're not all going to be elementary school kids, so they're going to go to the whole range of District 304 schools. But we want to make sure we have a safe pedestrian environment for them. The cost of the project. This is a complicated project, a lot of costs. There are still a lot of unknowns we need to answer. And whenever we do a project like this, it is a huge effort to coordinate multiple levels of government. So obviously we're working with you. We've spoken to the District 304 officials, so we've spoken to Kane County, and then we need to deal with state and federal agencies as well. So we're constantly coordinating multiple levels of government. In conclusion, we wanted to leave some key things with you. We are responsive and responsible developers. We are good neighbors, and we hope that over time, folks who have questions and concerns about this project will come to see us as good neighbors. We believe that this is the right and the best approach to preserve this important architectural treasure for the entire community and its surroundings. This project represents a $30 million investment in the local community with projected property tax increases and impact and permit fees paid to the local governments. Some questions I guess I wanted to leave for discussion for the council. What happens when this building deteriorates past the point of being salvaged? Because the market has shown that it can't figure out a solution to this building. So if not now for this building, then when? If not us, if you don't like this proposal, then who else is going to come and propose something that can save this building? So with that, my contact information is there on the screen. I thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Black, for your presentation. I'm sure the council will have many, many questions of you. The first question I had is you went through this, what happens to the tower?
So the tower stays.
But will there be any development in it, or?
There are no units in the tower. There actually is a 50,000-gallon former cedar water tank in the tower that used to hold water for one of the first sprinkler systems that was built in this area. It's beautiful wood. The barrel stays have kind of fallen down, so we're hoping to salvage the wood. It'll be essentially empty space within the building, perhaps for some of the cell phone equipment that's necessary, but nothing, no units in there.
When I was on the historic preservation before I was on city council, one of the things that came up often with Mr. Meyer was the glass block windows, because the glass block that's currently in the building is irreplaceable. You can't find anything that will match, not now, not ever. Would all the glass block be replaced, or would it be?
No, and the historic preservation people, I assume both locally and at the national level, have the same view that you do, that they want us to salvage and reuse as much of the glass block as possible. So to the extent that we're removing parts of the glass block in the back part of the building, they're going to ask us to infill that to replace broken blocks in the front of the building.
Great. Okay, so from the council, let's raise our hands, and I'll call on you, and we can have questions of the petitioner. Mr. Cerrone.
I have a question. You had a percentage of this that was going to be retail in the mixed-use percentage. Is there going to be anything new, or is it the existing businesses that are there taking up that retail space?
Right now, the plan is for all of the retail to be existing tenants. Obviously, if tenants leave, we'll need to replace them, but the current plan is to, in the spaces we can keep, to use the existing tenants and allow those tenants to stay.
Anyone else on the council? Mr. Chancer?
Is it feasible to turn any of the tower space into common space or storage space that would be useful to the residents?
The problem is there's no elevator in there. The elevator is actually behind the tower, so we'd need to put in a new elevator, and the problem is that is where the historic grand stair is, so I don't think the historic preservation people will allow us to intrude on that historic space.
Elliot?
You had mentioned on one of the later slides that the building was accessible for those with disabilities. Is the building, being historic as it is, ADA compliant?
Not right now. I mean, there are portions of the building, you can get into it, you can use the elevator now. I have not done an accessibility audit to know whether it's compliant today. I will tell you that we are committed in our redevelopment plan to making at least 10% of the housing units accessible, which means that we are proposing some units that don't have that up and down approach.
Two-story.
Right.
Okay.
So those are not accessible, but we have some units that are one story.
Will you be using all three levels of the building?
Yes.
All three will be used for it? Okay.
Yes.
As far as the parking goes on this, would you be amenable to expanding any of that if you need to, as far as distances, either north or south on that front parking lot or the rear parking lot?
Well, it's my understanding, and Scott and Joel and others may want to weigh in on this, but I think they have requested that we follow a plan development process, and so we'll be coming in with a PD plan that includes complete parking analysis. If we were to take the literal reading of the zoning code, the zoning code requires more than 300 parking spaces for this development, and there's only about 120 parking spaces there right now. Our parking analysis suggests we don't need anywhere near that number of parking spaces, so that will be part of our request as part of our PD that says, look, this is what our parking consultant, our engineering consultant tells us. This is where we think the historic preservation people are going to come down. So that will be part of our discussion, both with the Planning Commission and ultimately back with you.
Scott?
To say that that intersection there is tricky is probably a very conservative statement. In terms of access into and out of that property, what is your vision? Because that would be a very, very difficult spot to, and with 120 cars, 300 spots, whatever, that's going to be logistically very tough with the traffic.
Right. One of the things that's important to understand is that from a traffic engineering perspective, the use that we're proposing is a less intensive use than what is there now. All of the traffic engineers who work in the realm of urban planning and traffic analysis subscribe to the Institute of Traffic Engineering guidelines, and ITE consistently notes that commercial uses generate more traffic, more trips generated than residential uses. I was over there this evening, and actually, because it was a cold night, there were kids there for the rowing program, there were kids there for the golfing program. In the back of the building, there were kids there for volleyball and personal training. More likely than not, what we are proposing at this building is going to be all working families. And so those folks will very likely leave in the morning. Maybe they'll take their kid to school. Maybe the kid will walk to school, and they'll come back at night. And maybe they'll do some errands during the day. But what our traffic consultant has told us is that the traffic volumes generated by what we're proposing versus what is there now will be decreased. We're not proposing any changes to the site access at all. So there's an entrance off of Route 31, there's an entrance on Fabian Parkway, and we're not proposing to change those.
Thank you. Lucy?
What about pedestrian and bike access for this group? I mean, I know that
Right.
there's
Lucy,
not.
use the mic, please.
What about pedestrian and bike access for this group? I know that the sidewalk does not go north along 31, so it would be difficult. They're kind of an island
Right.
right now. So are there ways that you can improve this? I know you mentioned the connecting with Allen Drive.
Right.
But it seems like there should be ways going north in front of the building and maybe just getting safely across Fabian and 31.
Well, so Kane County has jurisdiction over Fabian, and so we have already begun a conversation. Our engineer has begun speaking with the Kane County traffic engineers about the configuration and their desire, their willingness to have sidewalks in their right-of-way. Kane County owns about the first 50 feet of property on the north side of Fabian Parkway. And so they need to allow us to do that. And I suspect with a request from the city of Batavia, they will be willing to cooperate with us. We've made that request of them, but that's one of the things that we will be asking of the city more broadly is to basically support us in that request and say, hey, we understand the need to do this. Kane County, will you work with us? Once you get to Allen Drive, Allen Drive is no longer Kane County. Allen Drive, I believe, is Geneva Township. So again, we need to make the same request to Geneva Township. There are no sidewalks from Fabian Parkway up to where the city of Geneva sidewalks start, which is, I don't know, about 800 feet in there, something like that. So there is, again, a stretch of jurisdiction that is not city of Batavia that we don't have any control over, that will need to be kind of part of an intergovernmental conversation.
Dan?
You'd mentioned the vast lawn that was gonna need to be mowed. I can only assume then, that there's a reason you're not proposing outlots. I would have expected a Starbucks or a Cleaners or something on that vast lawn. Is it because of the traffic configuration? Is it?
No, it has nothing to do with traffic. We need the historic tax credits in order to make this project work. We will not get historic tax credits if we build so much as a doghouse on that front lawn.
Scott?
I just want to go back to the math on the traffic. So we had talked earlier about there wouldn't be any of the commercial that we're leaving, correct? Well, there'd be some, but
Yep.
The west and the south would stay. So logic would dictate that if you're adding 80 units of residents, your traffic is going to do nothing but go up. in terms of,
Again, respectfully, I don't have my traffic engineer with me here tonight, but, at the next meeting, at the planning commission meeting, I will bring my traffic consultant. The traffic engineering guidelines are very clear that commercial trip generation is higher than residential trip generation. That's the professional opinion on that.
Hold on, somebody else.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. This is truly our meeting, and we can't talk over you, and we don't want to talk over you, but there are things that we have to learn as a council before we can make any determinations as to what to ask of the petitioner. So if you could please not comment, that would be terrific. Okay, so Marty, you had a question?
Yeah. How big were the windows again? Inside?
Which windows?
The ones in the front.
One's in the front, Dennis? So 4 feet wide and 4 feet, 3.5 feet tall. And there'll be most likely 2 in each unit.
Okay, because I guess going back to what Alderman Meitzler was saying, the accessibility issues, I would have a concern with, we don't have a lot of exit points in case of an emergency, in case of a fire. How is that being addressed?
So right now, the building is sprinklered. The sprinkler system in that building is adequate, but it was installed a few years ago. Our intention as part of our development is to fully upgrade the building to the current applicable building code, which would be an NFPA 13 sprinkler system. So that means basically full mixed use. We'd have full fire separation between the commercial components and the residential components. We would have fire-protected corridors that are also independently sprinklered. We'd have sprinklers in each bedroom. So when you have a configuration like this, the building is fully protected from fire, and there is enough time for anyone in that building to escape in any emergency. So there is no need under that building code to provide a separate means of egress from each unit. There are lots of apartment buildings where each unit only has an exit into a common corridor. That's just how apartment buildings are designed.
Mark?
You estimated around 30 children in here, which seems low to me. There's 44 2- and 3-bedroom apartments in here. Do you have statistics from your other properties that show how many children in similarly sized buildings are?
It's a great question. I don't have those off the top of my head. I'd have to research those a little bit.
How did you arrive at that number?
Mike?
It's an assumption about, as he said, about 44 units, and not all of those 2- and 3-bedroom units will have kids in them. Some of them will be just adults.
So, another thing is, we have crime-free housing here in Batavia.
Right.
And so we do really take serious quality of life issues for all residents. And how would you address that? Like, how would you vet any of these folks coming in?
So all of our tenants are subject to full review of a number of different aspects. So first of all, this building, they will need to pay their own utilities. So there is a credit check. And in order to get an electric bill or a gas bill from the utility companies, you have to have a minimum credit score. And if you don't pass that minimum credit threshold, then the gas company or the electric company won't provide you service, and so they can't live in this building. So that is one indication of sort of basic financial responsibility. We also do a full background check, including criminal background check, on all of our tenants. And we look back for a 10-year period. Generally, we do not allow those with a felony record into the property at all. For folks with, maybe they shoplifted something, we look at that on a case-by-case basis. But we are very aware of the crime-free ordinance, and we're in a number of communities as a property manager that have those, and frankly, we support it. Again, remember, this is a mixed income development. So we have folks in this development who are going to be paying $1,200, $1,300, $1,600 a month to live in this building. And they have the same expectations of anyone of living in a safe, quiet, comfortable building. And we need to manage this property, as we do all of our properties, to that market rate standard to make sure that in the end, this is a property that works for everybody, for the community and for us.
Can you tell me, you know, when you showed the slide of like the different levels of government, how do you work together? So like you come to the city of Batavia, you've got state credits, you've got federal credits. Like where are we in the tiered approach to like, how do you determine what you're doing next? Or like if we said yes and the state said no, is that how that works? It would just like go away then, or?
Well, I would flip that a little bit. I would say if you said no, then I think we're probably done.
Okay.
I think the state has already said yes on one fundamental level. The state has made an allocation of these LIHTC that provides more than half of our financing, which is one of the reasons that we have confidence to proceed as we are. The state is in support. The federal government right now is represented by the State Historic Preservation Office. They are in support of our preservation approach. They need to forward that to the National Park Service for final approval, but generally when the state historic people say yes, the federal historic people say yes. But there's a lot of coordination, and frankly, there's a lot of conversations, not just like this, but with staff. We've met, I don't know, 4 times, I think, with staff here to talk about our plans. We've met with the Geneva School District. We'd love to meet with neighbors. We actually just were over at the building just before this meeting, hosted a tour for about 15 people who had never really thought about what it is that we were proposing to do. So I think that's our job as developers, to coordinate those different levels of government. And if there is a broad consensus that this project is something that's worth doing, is to work around the numerous smaller issues that happen, including dealing with sidewalks, which I think is going to be a conversation that needs to happen on many levels, but part of our job is to get that to yes.
Thank you. Drew?
How tied is the financing of this project to the split of 80-20, 80% income restricted, 20% market rate?
It's pretty integral to that. Basically, investors in the current tax credit market that we're in won't invest in a project that has the kind of financing we do if there's more than 20% market rate. And that's just a function of the market that we're in right now. We've talked to them about that, and you know, they've said, yeah, that's about our limit right now. And it has to do with their perceptions of risk. For them, market rate units are perceived as riskier because you are subject to market risk. You know, if our neighbor's rent over here goes down because they really want to rent that apartment, I may lose a tenant to them, and so I may have a unit that's vacant for longer. Whereas the income restricted units, because there is a pretty clear pent-up demand in the community for those who are maybe not making that much money and need a place to live, there is much less market risk with those units because those units are likely to lease up much faster.
Mark?
I guess kind of along the same lines there, and I'm looking for statistics on what you have right now. If you have an 80-20 split, your occupancy on the 80 is probably 100%. What's your occupancy on the 20? How many of those are actually getting filled?
At Aurora, right now, we also have a mixed income development. We have fewer than 20% market rate units in Aurora. Those were some of the first units to lease up. What happens in the non-restricted units is we often get folks who love the building, but they make just a little bit more money than what those income limits allow. And so having market rate units in any building allows us to say yes to those tenants, whereas if we had a completely income restricted units, we'd have to say, sorry, you make too much money. We hate doing that. Frankly, we'd like to accommodate anyone who wants to live in a building, and having a mixed income development allows us to do that. But I will tell you that the market rate units in Aurora leased up faster than the low income units, just because of some processing things that we have.
What else? Nick?
Go ahead.
Do they follow everybody in the property would follow the same guidelines for when you're looking at their backgrounds?
Absolutely.
Nick, you had a question?
Well, just the market, the LIHTC component qualification. Do you have, obviously you have the development in Aurora that would be similar to this, maybe a different 80-20 split.
Yep.
Other developments in the area?
So there's a building that we just completed up in Mundelein, which is new construction. And that building is, I think, only 40 units. And that one is actually 100% restricted because of the particular conversations that we have with that local municipality. We are working in Milwaukee right now, up in Wisconsin, on a mixed adaptive reuse and new construction project that has, I think, 15% market rate. That one, we're still in development there, so I don't have statistics to report on that one. Again, the Aurora example is both closest to home and probably the most relevant.
Marty?
If the market rates are integral, like you had stated, for the project to work, what is the plan if those market units do not rent?
We don't see that as a likely scenario. Our market study, we have done our own market study with our third-party market consultant. Our investor has done a separate market study with a separate market consultant. They have shown a market that literally has thousands of people who would potentially both qualify and be interested in renting apartments here, both at the market rate tier and at the income restricted tier. I think there is that much housing demand. I quickly breezed over a slide, and I didn't really talk about it in the interest of time. The Homes for a Changing Region study that I know some of you on the council have worked on over the years. There is a huge demand for rental housing in this community, and the number of people, households, that are rent burdened increased dramatically from 2000 to 2011. And this project is really helping to address the need and the demand in this region that currently is not really being addressed.
And I fully appreciate that. I understand the demand that we do have in the area, but I guess the part of the doing due diligence is what is the plan if it doesn't?
Again, we don't make contingency plans for things that we don't see likely to happen. Because in every other development, particularly one that is as attractive as this one, we have not had any problem leasing those market rate units, and in fact, the market rate units have often leased first. This development is not for everybody, right? It's unlike any other building in metropolitan Chicago. So for people who want to live in a more conventional apartment, this is probably not the right building for you. But we are confident that there are enough people who want the building's mix of location and historic amenities and qualities and the quality of the units there and convenience, frankly, that we think we have enough just in that subset of the market to be able to lease this up. So in terms of a what if the units don't rent, we don't see that as a likely scenario. If they don't rent, basically that's our financial risk. They stay empty. But we don't see that happening.
Elliot?
I guess just another question I have coming back to the safety again. I recognize that 100% of the units are not going to rent out to those with children, but there will be children in this building.
Yes.
They may not even those children be 100% for the elementary age, but there will be some that are for the elementary age. The access points to get over to Allen Drive, that tells us that we're going to have children walking along Fabian, and that intersection is already dangerous enough. Where are these children then also playing? Because there are no public playgrounds unless you're going through neighbors' properties, which I will let them speak to that. What is the plan there, I guess, to not have children playing at the intersection, near enough intersection of Fabian and 31?
Well, it's a great question. Part of our plan is to provide some amenities inside the building. So we're looking at a game room, at a library. But currently folks, so if we're providing sidewalks, it's possible that those sidewalks would take kids to public parks. If not, we are expecting that many of our tenants, if not most of our tenants, will have cars, and they will drive their kids to parks and recreational facilities just like everybody else here.
Mike?
What if they don't have cars?
Well, there is a bus line on Route 31, and that is one of the aspects of this building that is attractive for those who don't have cars. We are expecting that it is unlikely that the tenants who live here are not going to have cars, so we are expecting that each apartment will have at least one car. Some of the apartments will have more than one car. But we do expect that most people who live here will have their own cars.
Are you planning to sell this at any time soon? Are you property owners that hold on to the property for what length of time?
We hold on to our properties for a minimum of 15 years. So there is a requirement under the LIHTC program that you hold on to the property for 15 years. The strings and restrictions that go along with our financing will actually encumber the property for at least 30 years, and it's possible that it will be a 40-year encumbrance. More likely than not, we will hold the property for the long term, for the entire time, because typically we are a develop and hold kind of firm. We are not typically selling our properties.
I have a question. Because we live in the age of the internet, people have contacted me who have Googled Evergreen, and the property that comes most often up is the development in Elgin off McLean Boulevard.
Yes.
And they point to that it isn't well managed. Can you speak to that at all so that it can allay some fears of people who might be listening or,
Right. No, I saw the reference there, and I looked at the website in particular that was being referenced there, and I have to say I am shocked that people who have negative things to say would post them on the internet. But if you look at those comments, the properties in Elgin are completely different than what we are proposing here. In Elgin, we own 3 separate apartment complexes, so the total there is more than 300 units. Those properties in Elgin are 100% low-income families. That is not at all what we have proposed here. Those properties in Elgin were properties that we purchased. And in many cases, we purchased properties at the urging either of IDA, the Illinois Housing Development Authority, or of HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, because IDA and HUD recognize us as one of the best property managers in metropolitan Chicago. And so we come in, and often there is a property manager who has run the project in a way that is not responsible and not good for either the tenants or for the neighbors. And we purchase that property and we make improvements, as we did in Elgin. So if you look at the comments that are posted there, they go back a number of years. And some of the comments are positive, but just as we are here tonight, we know that we can't please everybody all the time. And out of 300 plus tenants, I think if we have, a dozen people complaining about something over a multi-year period, I feel like that is a reasonable track record. And again, our relationships with the state regulatory agencies, I believe, speaks for itself.
Thank you so much for answering that.
Susan?
Dave?
I got just 1 or 2 other questions, and then I know the mayor's got some comments he'd like to make, and I think in the interest of time, we should try to wrap this part of it up and then turn it over to staff so they can do their portion. Alderman O'Brien asked a question about the ownership, which was one that I was going to ask, and you answered that very well, so thank you. The windows that you'd be proposing to put in, and you're saying that there's going to be kids there, thought on how safe it is? I mean, they're going to be so far above the ground level on the outside. Are they child-proof in any way, shape, or form, or is there any consideration there at this point? I know we're very early in the process.
Well, I mean, yes, so the windows will comply with all of the child safety requirements. Typically, the windows are only allowed to open a certain dimension, in part to address child safety requirements in the building code. It is, safety of our tenants and our kids is an important aspect to any project to us. And so if there are code requirements, certainly we meet them, and in many cases, we exceed them.
Okay, thank you. I'm hearing that the willingness to provide that sidewalk is there?
It is.
Okay. And then as we go through the plan development, if we go that far, there'll be discussion about parking and the parking requirements and such.
Yes.
Because I think in the past, there's been some concern by developers or proposals by developers that they don't think as much parking is required as what the code requires, and then they want to try to negotiate something where, you know, if needed, we'll do it later on. I can tell you, I, for one, I don't like that idea because the if needed later on is very hard to enforce later on unless there's some real teeth into the PD, the plan development, such as a long-term letter of credit, something like that. So that would be just one concern I would have as you go forward. The other comment I want to make is, you know, I think our biggest, we certainly have to consider everything that's being said, and I thank the audience for being very patient because, again, this is the very first time we've had any conversation about this as a council. So to hear what we're all thinking and to hear what the developer's proposing, it's what we have to do in order to move forward. So thank you for your patience. But we have to consider, one of the biggest things is we have to consider the change in the zoning. You know, we're going from an industrial building to a commercial rather, to a residential, or a mixed use, I should say. So that's a great consideration. I can tell you that the preservation of the building itself is very intriguing to me. Before I even heard about this, and I know, you know, we don't hear about things when staff is talking about it, but before I even had heard about this, I drive by there quite often, and you know, a historic building is great, but if somebody isn't maintaining it or improving it, it's gonna fall apart in front of your eyes. So to have somebody standing in front of us that we can at least consider what their proposal is, I think is great. So I thank you for that. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, the staff and myself have had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Block and the staff on a number of occasions, and we've talked about a number of the issues, the sidewalk and whatever. The one insight I would like to share is that going back to 1971, the city of Batavia began accepting and approving, I'll call it the lower income housing product in our community. And we have several of them in Batavia. I think if you look at our numbers versus many of the neighboring communities, we have more than some of the others. And I'm proud of that fact. I think Batavia offers a diversification of housing opportunities for people, and that is, in the most instances, it's worked pretty well for us. And so I don't have any real concern about that. But the one concern I do have is that we have a history here with these types of product. And the one thing that, despite what we were told back in 1971, and I wasn't on the council at the time, but I was the newspaper reporter that was covering the story of some of the early affordable housing products that were being discussed in Batavia. And one of the things that was said back then was, well, we won't have many cars. We don't need all the parking because we won't have many cars. Well, you know, we were told one thing, but the other thing turned out to be the reality that we get a lot of cars in product that is supposedly lower income residents. And we've got one situation, and I'm not going to name names here, but we have one situation where we have so many cars out there that at the end of the day, the city council and myself had to agree to allow them to build a parking lot off of the fire lanes at the rear of the building. And much to the chagrin of the fire department, that we've had to build parking lots that are serviced by the fire lanes. And so when anybody comes in now and says to me, I want to have a variation to the parking, that's a red flag in my mind, because that really historically in this town has not worked. And I think this one would worry me because I think we will have a lot of people with a lot of cars. And many of these folks, for whatever reason, own 2 and 3 cars. And I've got the police department out there running license plates and everything else on this. And we get a lot of 2 or 3 ownerships with cars in these areas. So I really would encourage the council to be very cautious in granting any variances on parking, because The history has not been that there are no cars. There are a lot of cars.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff, would anyone from staff like to come up and address the council with anything that you have to say?
We don't have anything to add at this time.
You don't have anything to add? Okay, great. Okay, so now we have some time to take some comments from the public. People are here and they have some questions. You need to come up to the podium and state your name. And if there's a lot of people, if you'd like to form a line over to the right. Also, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If someone else has already said what you were thinking, please don't repeat it. We hear well, and we don't need repetition to get the point across. This is, again, a very preliminary meeting. This is the first, as Alderman Brown said, this is the very first time that this has come in front of us. And so we're hearing it at the same time you are. We're processing it too. So and we're on live TV also. So please don't say anything that you would want, you know.
Now you tell me.
Yeah, it's very easy to say things in the heat of the moment that the next time you're in Jewel and people look at you and go, really? You said that on television? That does happen to me. So, you know, you might want to just realize that you are on live TV.
And I think our mayor from Geneva is here. I hope he was listening to that warning about what you say on TV, Kevin.
Yep.
He doesn't get into free pizza.
Yes.
He's standing in the hallway hiding.
Okay, sorry.
Susan,
Yes.
before you get started, too, I wanted to also say, and I think our city administrator, Laura Newman, wanted to
I
address
see
this
her
very-
arm up now.
very briefly. If you don't get a chance to address us tonight, she is going to talk a little bit about what we'd like to have you do, and that is, I shouldn't steal her thunder, as the mayor would say, but you could email us all. It'd be very easy for you with technology to email us all. But what would happen would be, we would all email our city attorney. And so now she's going to do nothing but read emails all day long, and that doesn't get anything done. So we would like, if you don't get a chance to talk tonight, or even if you do, if you want to, send an email to the city of Batavia with your concerns, questions, comments. She's going to give you her email address, and everything's going to be directed to her. We talked about this before the meeting tonight, so this isn't a surprise to her either. And she will compile everything. And again, like I said, if you don't get a chance to talk tonight, those emails then will become a part of the record. So it will be not ignored, it'll be a part of the record. Laura?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. There's a pad of paper up there on the podium. I noticed that you availed yourself of that. And just to write your name and your address down there, those are just so that the secretary, as she's taking the notes, can have an accurate reflection of who spoke here tonight. Also, there's another pad of paper that's making its way through the audience, and we wanted to collect a list of email addresses for people who would like to be kept up to date on the project. So we'll put that into a list, and anytime that there are updates on this project, we will send that information out to you. I also have placed a couple of stacks of my card up here on the table so that you'll have all of my contact information if you wanted to send me your statements, or if you ever have any questions about the project and you want to contact me, feel free to do so. And if I run out of cards that are there today, you can just look at the city website at the administration page, and there's a direct link to my email and my contact information there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ready.
My name's Chuck Miles. I'm a Geneva resident. I've lived at 1015 Westfield Course on the east side for 27 years with my wife, who's a speech path in the Geneva schools, my 25-year-old daughter, who's autistic, and my twin 21-year-old sons that are in college. I'm a volunteer leader in the Fox River Valley Initiative. You'll hear more about that from some of the other speakers. I served on Geneva's Homes for a Changing Region Committee, so I'm familiar with the Homes for a Changing Region. I'm also on the board of the Association for Individual Development, AID, which many of you know, serving for the past 5 years as president. AID provides behavioral health and developmental disability services to over 5,000 people in Kane and Kendall County, and has done so for 56 years. One of the many challenges we face at AID is the development of affordable housing for people that use our services. In the past several years, AID has partnered with developers like Evergreen, we haven't worked with Evergreen until just now, to develop safe, affordable housing in South Elgin and Aurora. I can tell you from experience that most of the perceptions we have from our past, all of us, concerning what affordable housing is, are in fact misperceptions. One of the keys to this success is the development of mixed income housing, where the management company is on site and manages that property to the demands and expectations of those paying full rent. You could drive by these properties and I could tell you they are better, cleaner, and safer than most of the places I lived in right after college. Evergreen is presenting us with an opportunity, both the city of Batavia and the city of Geneva. A big part of that opportunity is to give families that may be struggling the chance to, first of all, live in a community where they work, and secondly, to allow their children a chance to attend first-class schools that we are fortunate enough to have in the Tri-Cities. Education provides these children a chance to improve their lives. As I was getting ready for this, I thought back on my childhood growing up in a little farm town in Delavan, Wisconsin. And I was probably low income, but I didn't know it. Neither do these kids. And most of you, if you think back on where you grew up, you were probably low income too and didn't know it. I was fortunate that I had access to good public schools and parents that realized education was critical. In short, I was given an opportunity by the community in which I lived. It's also important to see how this project fits into Batavia's plans. It aligns with the City of Batavia comprehensive plan. The redevelopment of the Campana aligns well with the city's comprehensive plan, including the 9th issue in the comprehensive plan's economic development and redevelopment element specifically identifies the Campana redevelopment. Quote, "The presence of the historical Campana building is an important part of the city's architectural heritage. The building and campus is underutilized and is in need of maintenance. Opportunities exist to increase the economic usefulness of the building and site while maintaining its historic character. The historic nature of the building and site does create extraordinary logistical and financial challenges in increasing economic usefulness." I think the proposal we saw from Evergreen Development gives us all an opportunity to take advantage of this. It also helps meet the housing demand as identified in the Homes for a Changing Region, Changing Policy Plan. Page 38 of the Batavia plan, and I think Geneva's plan is probably even more dire, if you will, in terms of affordable housing. But that page 38 identifies a projected demand for 629 townhomes and 1,085 multifamily units, demonstrating the increasing demand for denser unit types driven by the increasing number of low and middle income working age singles, couples, and family rental population. Finally, Evergreen is looking to invest $30 million, significant time and money, to redevelop the Campana in a public-private partnership to benefit Batavia, Geneva, and its citizens. I encourage the Batavia City Council to take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi. My name's Maggie Haroldson, and I live at 1659 Pheasant Run Place, Geneva, Illinois. That's in the Allendale subdivision, which is directly behind Campana and south of Western Avenue School. I'm also a volunteer leader at the Fox River Valley Initiative, a member of Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Charles, and a lifetime member of the Illinois Education Association. I fell in love with the Campana building when I moved to Geneva at age 16. My husband and I built our house in Allendale in 1989. I was really excited when I heard about the possibility of the structure being used for affordable housing. I'd never been inside Campana, so I gave myself a little tour last week. I was surprised to notice that some of the glass block appears to be broken, and this treasure looks like it needs quite a bit of work right now to preserve it. You don't necessarily see all this as you whiz by on 31. I was kind of surprised. The inside was gorgeous. I especially liked the beautiful stairs in the center of the building. I could imagine wonderful, unique apartments could be built there with young people, seniors, single moms, workers in the community who otherwise might not be able to live in our town. I know what that feels like. Years ago, as a beginning teacher, I got my first job in Geneva and also my first apartment. I figured out pretty fast that I couldn't afford to live in my apartment above one of the shops on 3rd Street by myself. So in my one-bedroom apartment, I always had a roommate. That was awkward. And I live paycheck to paycheck. I know what that feels like. I hope for better for these workers in our community. My two boys went to school at Western Avenue School in Geneva. It's a great school, and I would love for the children who live at the Campana building to have the same opportunity for a quality education that my sons had. I've been researching how affordable housing in the neighborhood affects home values. Seems like you can Google support for any position you want to take. I've read studies that suggest affordable housing has little effect on surrounding home values, and I've also read studies that suggest this kind of housing may have a small effect on values of homes within 1/10 of a mile from the development. I'm not worried. Allendale is a wonderful place to live, and having affordable housing nearby will only enhance our community. I've heard neighbors wonder out loud whether there would be increased crime. Again, my research indicates this shouldn't be a problem. We have a great neighborhood, and I'll bet the people in the Campana building will enjoy the peace and quiet as much as we do. In short, I support this development, even though it is in my backyard. I believe it will be good for Geneva and for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, if, for anybody that has any written documents or, you know, that you'd like to leave here with the city clerk so she can incorporate those right into our minutes, that'd be great. You could just drop them off right here with her.
My name is Rick Lathrop. My wife and I live at 607 Evergreen Drive in Batavia, and we're members of the Congregational Church of Batavia. I'm also a volunteer leader with the Fox River Valley Initiative, a coalition of 13 churches, community service organizations, and other civic-minded organizations in our county. We serve together approximately 30,000 people. The Fox River Valley Initiative began working to secure more affordable housing in Kane County over 3 years ago. I'm here this evening to ask the council to approve at an appropriate meeting the repurposing of the Campana building into living spaces for working families. One of the characteristics my wife and I really appreciate about living in Batavia is the diversity of people we have as neighbors. Repurposing this historic and valued building will preserve both the building and increase the diversity in our population. Let's just think for a minute about eligibility for residents in the proposed building. A family of 4 with an income of less than $40,000 a year can receive support in housing payments. According to the site Salary Expert online, which is a salary estimate site, all the bank tellers and bartenders in Batavia paid at or below the average rate would qualify. According to another site, PayScale Human Capital Online, every employee in our community who is paid at the average rate or below will qualify except for 2 job categories, maintenance managers. According to the District 101 website, every newly hired education support employee in our schools, except again 2 in maintenance, would be eligible for housing support. When I started my teaching career, our family was eligible for housing assistance. We're pretty good neighbors now, and we were very good neighbors then. As David showed earlier, 26% of Batavia families would be eligible for support in living would have increased access to affordable housing. Our small congregation of the Congregational Church receives requests for help staying in their current residence about 3 times every month. These are neighbors who aren't able to make the mortgage or the rent payment or the utility payment that month. They are neighbors who are unable to find a place in Batavia and in nearby communities that they can afford to live in. Providing affordable quality housing for more residents and preserving the historic Campana building are within our reach if we move toward approving this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Hi, I don't have any prepared remarks, but I'm Adam Gibbons. I live in Geneva Township on Hill Road in one of the old snow farmhouses. Mayor Schulke may remember some of the snows from a few years back. But I'm a history teacher. I'm the author of The Founders of Geneva and the Illustrated History of Campton Township. I was a history teacher for 17 years, and now I'm an at-home tutor for the St. Charles School District and the Geneva School District. My wife is a teacher at Western Avenue School. And we are 100% in favor of this amazing project. I got the privilege of being inside the building. This is one of the greatest, I think, in my opinion, examples of adaptive reuse. You're not going to find, this is, I would call the style of the building streamlined modern. It's a version of Art Moderne and Art Deco. It's almost unique in the Tri-Cities, much less Kane County or this part of Illinois. It's an amazing building, and to have a feasible plan that would preserve it, including the full east facade, is, you know, I'm not going to say once in a lifetime, but a very rare opportunity. It's a great building, wonderful ceilings, the views are terrific. There are small logistic issues to work out, but of course, those pale in comparison to, you know, the larger picture. You know, I, for one, like to welcome people at all income levels. I myself, my sister and I were, again, similar to an earlier speaker, we maybe didn't know it, but we were low income in the 1990s. Our mother made $19,000 a year, and we both put ourselves through Northwestern University and turned out okay, so, I would say. And, you know, I would caution people against associating low income with high crime, which I noticed was alluded to earlier. So I just want to state that. This is a great project. I can't wait to see it if it is approved by the city of Batavia. It is in Geneva Township, so I feel like, you know, it's a very historic site too. The original building on the site was relocated and is still standing in circa 1840 frame structure. So the site itself has great history too, and this would help preserve that. So thank you for your consideration of this project, which I'm 100% in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Pastor Josh Bailey Green. I live at 413 North Van Nortwick Avenue in Batavia with my wife and son. And I serve as one of the pastors at Batavia United Methodist Church, a historic and vital congregation right here in the heart of Batavia. I also represent the Northern Illinois Conference of the United Methodist Church, which is a member of the Fox River Valley Initiative. I'm here to speak in support of the Campana Affordable Housing Site, this plan that's been presented. As a pastor in this community, I regularly hear from those who have, through adverse life circumstances, ended up down on their luck and struggling to keep a roof over their heads. For many of them, the Fox Valley is where they call home. It's where they have a supportive community of friends and family, and where they desire to be a part of a broad, welcoming community. With her permission, I want to share with you a story of one such person, a member of our congregation by the name of Marcy. Marcy had found a strong and special community in Batavia through her church and with her neighbors. She doesn't have strong family support and doesn't have children or close kin to help her through difficult circumstances, so the church has been able to do that for her. After years of employment in elder care, which was physically demanding, eventually her health circumstances dictated that she couldn't continue in this work. As she struggled to make ends meet, she knew she needed to find a more affordable living situation, and ideally for her, it would be one that kept her close and connected to her church community here in Batavia. This brought her, though, out to Maple Park, where she currently resides, and placed significant barriers to her full connection with her community of support. Since 2014, Marcy has been looking for an opportunity to return to Batavia and had been on a wait list, a long wait list for one of the affordable housing options in our community. After years of waiting, she has finally been accepted to enter an apartment in the upcoming months. She's thrilled, and after she moves in, out of gratitude, she wants to get connected in service to her community. And the pastoral team at Batavia United Methodist Church, which is myself and Pastor Cynthia Anderson, are thrilled as well for Marcy. But we also know that if there had been more options for affordable housing nearby, Marcy would have been able to return much sooner to this community that means so much to her, rather than being on a wait list for years. while using her time and energy to serve this community and her fellow neighbors who find themselves down on their luck. Here is just one story, and there are many more as we encounter, of people who love the Batavia, Geneva, and Fox Valley communities and want to be able to remain, return, or become part of it. The proposed mixed income and mixed use development would A, help those like Marcy who love this region and want to be a part of it. B, would enhance the convenience and the capacity of the very workforce that serves communities like Batavia and Geneva as school teachers, aides, nurses, and the like. And C, would enable an incredible local landmark, the Campana building, to be restored to its former glory and enjoyed by all. When I consider these huge benefits, it seems like a clear win-win-win, which is why I am strongly in support of this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just so everyone knows, we did not plant people in the audience. And so I just want everybody to know that we're just listening, and we gave no logical order to anyone. So just so you know.
Okay, I'm probably going to come off as a plant too. My name's Jeff Jenkins. I live in Wayne, but my connection to this area is I pastor a small church in Geneva, and I also serve as chaplain and president of Kairos Torch Ministries, which draws its membership from about 60 members from churches in this area, several of them in Batavia and Geneva. I hear stories all the time from the people that I serve and minister to about housing. They fall into categories of either I've got an aging parent who's still able to live independently but is on a fixed income, or I've got a disabled or developmentally disabled child that can live independently but is on disability insurance. And there just isn't enough affordable housing in this area, so either they come back in with me or they go out somewhere way out where they can afford to live, sometimes further west, or Rockford even. Everybody I know came to this area because it's a family-friendly place, and lack of affordable housing sometimes has a tendency to stress out families and divide up families. So I'm in favor of any type of affordable housing, but especially something like this. I also spent 30 years in civil engineering. I spent 15 years on my village's planning commission. I see this as a really well thought out and well-designed project. And I feel if it gets built the way David Block and Evergreen is talking about, it will be an asset to the community. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
All right, hi Batavia. I came here alone. Unfortunately, wasn't with anybody else. I'm a new resident of Batavia. I moved here last summer.
Name?
Really happy to be here. Love
Name?
it here.
Name?
My name is Kip Blake.
Thank you.
There's a lot of things we heard tonight, right? We heard, it reminded me of my buddy who's a salesman. We heard the sense of urgency being created, companions crumbling, which, it does need to be taken care of. We heard, the takeaway closed. We heard no one else is going to be able to do this. No one else is going to be able to save this building. And we heard a lot of other things like, a single teacher with 3 kids is going to be the type of person that's going to be moving into these units. Well, then we also heard that, maybe 20 to 30 students will be there and having an impact on the Western Avenue School. One of the reasons I moved here and chose the house that we did was to be able to go to Western Avenue School. And looking at my research, the attendance boundaries were just changed about a couple of years ago. I'm afraid that might happen again. If a single teacher with 3 kids, if that's the kind of person that's going to be moving into these units, that's 240 new students, not 30 students. So the numbers are a little off, right? Also, I thought about, the takeaway close. This is the only company that can come in and do this. If low-income housing is the way that we want to approach this, which it's a viable option. But then I looked into it a little more deeply. I looked at Evergreen Real Estate. the Evergreen Real Estate Group, and I looked at some of their properties, such as the Buena Vista Apartments, which are right along the same road, just a little bit further north. And some of the reviews I saw, they gave me some concerns. I saw a lot of former tenants talk about it being very loud. I saw a lot of tenants talking about people those that don't work in the area out drinking or drugs in the area, and also gang activity. I also heard about gunshots, and along with the couple of homicides last year. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but it did stick in my mind when he was asked about the vetting process and how they're going to screen these potential new tenants. And they said, well, the utility company is going to be running a credit check. Well, a credit check is not the only way to screen. It should be the very last thing that you're looking at, unless you're just thinking about the money you're going to make, right? There are other companies out there, such as Pangea Real Estate, which has buildings in Chicago, Indianapolis, Baltimore, right? They're huge out there. And I know them very well, and I know they have a much more complicated vetting process. They also do a lot more outreach to the communities or their members there. They do, there's other counseling available and help with the kids. And there's a lot more to be done to help these tenants than, just make sure there's some guards on duty. I'm also concerned with the traffic. It's going to combine with the One Washington Place traffic. And what's that going to be like? I happen to live along Route 25, really close to the area. And I know that, okay, in the next couple of years, this is going to get rough each morning. There's just a lot of things that are in my mind here, and I think there's a lot more that we could probably do, or different things we should explore first before we commit to something like this. Maybe a nice community center or a children's museum, or perhaps an indoor all-year farmer's market, right? I mean, there's a lot that could be done, and a lot of other companies that are out there that could help us and we could approach. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Kip, thank you for your comments. And just as an aside, the slide that he put up about affordability was based on just income. It wasn't that was the proposed tenant was a single teacher with 3 children. It was just an example of income level. So I just wanted to put that out there. And it's not 3 children in every unit. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also,
What's the point on the slide?
but that was out of context. Your comment was out of context. And the other thing is,
Get the gravel.
Susan, let's keep the,
I will. And again, was mentioned, this is a developer that has come to us. When it comes to all of the great ideas that you had, again, someone has to fund those. And so this is a developer that's come to us, and that's why we're exploring this option. And so, please, we've not made up our mind. That's why we're here tonight. So I'm just saying, when people come up and talk and they have great ideas, that's great. And so I just wanted to say that. So, please.
Hello, my name is Denise LeCure, and I live in Geneva. I live on Western Avenue. I'm also the assessor for Geneva Township, and I will tell you that I have probably spent a good part of Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, and Tuesday talking to the constituents in Geneva Township, wondering what's going to happen to their property values. So there's a lot of speculation out there. And one of the things that I picked up tonight was that there's been some talk about, there's a number of people here that would, in this community, that would qualify, their incomes would qualify them to live there. But it's my understanding, or at least I was also told, that there's also such a long waiting list of people waiting for low-income housing, that there's like a 600-person waiting list. And my question is, anybody anybody in this community going to live there? That would be one of my questions. And can that be guaranteed? I do. I see what you're saying. There's a lot of people in this community that have lower paying jobs that could use that, but it's not going to do them any good if you take 80 people from the Aurora Housing Authority that already have housing vouchers. And it's also my understanding that the housing vouchers, they won't even take applications anymore. The application process has has been ended for the last 3 years because there's such a backlog. So that would be a question that, maybe I could get an answer for now.
That's a great question. Thank you. Actually, we're not questioning the developer tonight, but it's a good thing to put in front of us so that it's something we can ask in the future.
Okay, I'm also a member of the Kairos Torch Prison Ministry Program. But I do have a little different perspective than Mr. Jenkins. We both work at the same organization. But I have had a lot of people that are really concerned about what this is going to do to their property values. And they talk about, let's build a sidewalk from there to Allendale Road, like it's nothing. Those people there are people that have lived in that community for a long, long time. There's Considine Road and Red Wing Road, and it's made up of a lot of elderly people. And I happen to work at the senior center down at Geneva. That's where my office is located as assessor. There's a lot of seniors. The ones that live on Considine Road who are elderly people are terrified of the crime that this could bring in. So if you can guarantee that people are going to come from this community and they're going to be well behaved, and that you can guarantee the safety of the surrounding community, then great. But I don't, and I also feel like I understand that people who, in order to get a variance of any kind, for this type of building, that they have to notify property owners within 250 feet, and I think that was done. That was 8 houses in Geneva Township. I got news for you. We have 11,500 parcels, and we have 23,000 people in Geneva. So I guess I'm a little upset that and this is in Geneva Township, and it does affect people in Geneva Township, and we are neighbors, and if you want to be good neighbors, I really think that the people in the surrounding neighborhood should be informed and should be allowed to have an input in this. And but my biggest concern, and went, wow, right across the street is a homestead. That is a 100% senior community. There's not a lot you can walk right in there. There's no guard gates or nothing to stop people. So, there is a fear. You're smirking.
No,
but there is a fear that
this is actually,
that there is.
No, this is honestly, this is not a road we want to go down in terms of who will live in the complex right now, because we're primarily just talking at a very preliminary stage. Yeah. So, it's one of the things I defer to Alderman Brown because, and that's what, I'm not smirking as much as I'm looking at him to say,
Okay.
give me some direction here.
All right,
as to
well,
where
let me,
you want me to go.
okay. But I'll tell you, when you're looking at a project like this, the first thing that comes to many of our minds, because I've talked to a lot of people out there, is Batavia Apartments. It's kind of a blight on the community.
If we could really, ma'am, if we could stick to the issue at hand here.
It is an issue.
Well, okay, then make your comments and we'll take them under consideration, but there's no conversation here about the type of individuals that may not live there. What we're considering is the type of development that's being proposed. So, to speculate is to speculate.
I think people are very concerned about.
We are all very concerned about every development we do. Go ahead and give us your comments. We will take everything you say under consideration, but let's not paint a picture until we know what kind of painting we're going to paint.
Well, one thing I should add is that the city of Tinley Park is being sued right now by the U.S. Department of Justice because instead of considering the issues, which are the zoning and relevant issues to the land use, they started to speculate about who might be living there. So we aren't going to go down that road. It's not a road we can go down. It's not relevant to our discussion.
You know what, I'm going to say one thing also. I don't mean to say anything, but that's in the first ward. That's my ward, okay? It's right down the street from me, the Batavia Apartments, okay? And when I applaud the Batavia Apartments, it brings diversity. My children grew up in a diverse community, and not once, I've been there for 26 years, has there been any issues in that surrounding area for crime. I mean, that I know of. Well, I guess there have been, but I do support the Batavia Apartments.
So, and.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's
and-
my ward, and
and-
the people that I represent.
And further to your point, when I look over there, our city attorney is sitting next to Alderman Brown. And so I looked to both of them for direction because I knew that we were veering off on a path that is against the law,
Absolutely.
basically. So I wanted to make sure that we were going down the right path.
Well, I happen to agree with the gentleman before me. This property was built in 1930, and it wasn't landmarked in 2003. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. To me, I've always, since I've been out here and since 1979, it's always been just a huge derelict. And I think there's other uses for that. What's hand-strapping that property, it's 12 acres of really prime real estate that could be developed into much more units if the landmarking status was just dropped. That property could be redeveloped for something a lot more and a lot bigger and a lot nicer. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's, come on, we're running short on time here, so we need to keep.
I'm going to try to keep this as short as I possibly can. I hate the sound of my voice. This is not good for me.
Could you give us your name, please?
David Ray. I live in Hart Road in Batavia. And I think I'm bringing a little bit of a different perspective here tonight. I actually work for an LIHTC syndication firm in Chicago, and we would ultimately be representing the investor in the Campana. So I realized this may seem like a conflict of interest. I talked to our legal counsel to see, should I say anything at the meeting? Should I not? I thought about it a lot. And, as a Batavia resident, as someone who has seen, 300, 400, 500 low-income housing developments across the U.S., from New York City to Los Angeles to East St. Louis. I've worked with probably 100 or 200 developers across those states. I'm on my way to Missouri tomorrow morning to meet with another developer. I can honestly say that I haven't met many developers as good and capable as Evergreen, especially when it comes to adaptive reuse. The idiosyncrasies of adaptive reuse, it's really complex. Most of the developers we work with could not do adaptive reuse. And when I heard that we had won the bid for the Campana, or that we had won the bid to be the syndicator, my first thought was, oh, that's interesting, that's gonna be really complex. And then I heard, well, it's going to be Evergreen along with Weiss Langley Weiss as architect, and I think I heard Lynn Mathis as the contractor. I can tell you that in the affordable housing industry, if you talk to people about Evergreen or about Weiss Langley Weiss or even Lynn Mathis, almost every person is going to have a good reaction. They are very well respected, not just in Chicago, but throughout the Midwest, and they know adaptive reuse. My job is underwriting for the investor, essentially. So I need to make sure in my job that the financing sources align with the uses. And 9 times out of 10 they do, but occasionally we'll get a developer, and we're seeing this all over the South right now, especially in Texas. They'll come to us and they'll say, hey, we've got this $10 million deal, and we've got $10 million of financing lined up. And so we start underwriting, and then we're 1 month from closing, and we find out, you know what, the GC came back and it's actually $15.5 million. There's a financing gap, we can't find another note, and the whole deal blows up. That's even more likely to happen with adaptive reuse unless you have an incredibly good and capable architect and developer. And what we saw with the Aurora St. Charles development, which we also helped partner with, is they came in right where they said they were going to come in and matched their financing sources. This is not the first deal we've done with them. We did a deal in Chicago called Humboldt House, which is another adaptive reuse. This group puts their money where their mouth is. They're honest. They underwrite their deals very carefully. The budgets never explode. And they're beautiful buildings, I have to say. And I wouldn't be here. I'm a Batavia resident, and if this was a different developer, I would not have come here tonight, because I know I kind of probably do sound like a plant to some people, and that's perfectly fine if you think that. If this were an average developer, I would not be here right now. But they're not average. They're actually really, really good, and so is the architect. And the GC is well capitalized and can cover, some sort of shortfalls if there's a shortfall. This is a really good team. So I just wanted to say that as a Batavia resident and as someone who works in the LIHTC industry, I think it's a really good idea to let this go through. So I hope you guys pass it, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Hello, my name is Chess Valenti, and I live in Geneva, in Allendale, and I also rent a space in Campana. I've been there for a few years, and I love it. I love the building, and I don't have an opinion as of yet about what I think about the reuse. I think it's interesting, and I love the building, and it sounds like they do too. But what I wanted to come up and say to you guys is I think this is just the start, the tip of the iceberg. Like, I have so many questions, and I know there's lots of people here, and you guys say this is just the beginning. But like, the presentation was awesome, but I could sit here for 2 hours and ask so many questions, and I would just like to say, let's keep the conversation going and let's ask those questions, because I bet everyone here has a bunch of questions. And I think that's really important, and again, I really don't have an opinion. I live in Allendale. I would be the neighbor. I love the diversity. That was when my husband and I, we moved here from Los Angeles. One of the biggest reasons we almost didn't move to Geneva was because lack of diversity. I mean, we were my husband, we always joke, he's like the only Jewish person there, So I'm all for the diversity. I think that's awesome. I'm trying really hard not to relate that to crime. But we were just talking about the design of the building. So I've been in Campana a ton. I mean, every day, pretty much. And looking at the slides that the gentleman presented, those blocks, they're not clear. So the actual apartment buildings, I don't see how there would be that much light. And again, I wouldn't live there, but I'm concerned about what it would look like on the inside. I think the units look small. I was lucky enough to receive the plans probably before a lot of people here because I am in the building, but I think the units are small. I think I don't think there will be a lot of light. The light is really diffused, even at the height of the sun power, it doesn't make it through. He mentioned something about the windows not opening that much. If you have kids and the windows, I know they can't open because the kid could fall out, but if they don't open, I don't know. These are the kind of questions that I have, like the logistics of what it would be like. I also think if there are kids there, they need a place to play. Like, we have a park. I know you guys were talking about the sidewalk into Allendale, so we have a park there, but kids are gonna wanna go out after school and play. Like, even if you only have 25 kids, which I don't think will happen, and that's fine, but kids wanna go out and play, and so they're gonna end up being on the front lawn. I think that's inconvenient at best. So I would like to explore, can we explore putting a playground there or something for the kids? I mean, the indoor activities, that's when stuff happens, when kids are kept indoors. Like, let's let them play outside. I think that's really important. And I know we've gone over ad nauseum, the sidewalks and the intersection, but I will say, so I ride my bike down to the bike path, and it's really hard to get back into Allendale. Even for me as an adult, I have my daughter on like the bike trailers, and I'm always petrified going. One time my husband was like, I'll come pick you up. I mean, so you have these kids, they're living in Campana, they're gonna wanna go down to the river, they're gonna wanna cross that street. That is really scary. It's really scary. So I think that definitely needs to be addressed. Just things like that I think, let's just keep the conversation open. It sounds like it could be awesome, but I think there could be some issues that we might need to work out. And the last thing, I just think it's weird that I feel like Geneva should be part of the decision making. I mean, I know it's not, and legally it's not, but it's like, it seems like it's like in Geneva, and I just feel like it should kind of be everyone talking together and being a team. And I wish, is there anyone in government from Geneva here? Like, yes, thank you. Okay. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Like, let's ask questions. Let's get answers. Let's demand that it's awesome. And I do want to say one more thing. I do not believe that that this is the only thing that can be there. And I'm totally down with this. If this happens, let's make it awesome. Let's do it. But I know that there have been some other viable commerce options that have been met with resistance. And again, none of these are hard facts, but I don't know if I believe that is all I'm saying. But anyways, if it happens, let's just talk about it, guys. Let's ask the questions. Let's really get some answers.
Thank you. One of the things that I want to say, and I think that this is something, it's a misconception of government. So, we're here and we're sitting in city council and there's that property out on the corner. It's private property, which is kind of an interesting thing in that we don't govern, we govern it, but we don't tell the owners of that property what they should do with it. So while it would be great to be a children's museum, the people who own the building actually have a say as to what happens with it. And so when a developer comes to them and says, hey, we're interested in purchasing your building and this is what we want to do with it, that's when it comes to city council. It doesn't work the other way around. The city council doesn't go out going, hey, we want your property and we're going to turn it into blah, blah, blah. So you have to kind of understand that there is a process and how this works. So the owners of the building were approached by a developer. The developer then comes to us to make sure that the zoning coincides with what we see is the right use for their property, et cetera. So just so that everybody's clear about that when you start thinking about terrific ideas about what could happen with a companion building. So that said, your turn.
Alderman Stark, why don't we give this 10 more minutes of public comment?
Sounds good.
And let the public make the comment, if we could, please.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Bob McQuillan, and I live at 465 Walcott Lane in Batavia. I'm a former resident of Geneva for 20 years. First of all, I want to thank you for being up there and facing a very large crowd. It's not very easy. And I'd like to thank the city administrator. I think that filtering everything through her via email and then posting on a website as an ongoing running blog, I guess, is a great idea. A lot of boards don't do that, so that will keep us all informed as the process goes ahead. I'll stay under 3 minutes. Tonight I want to talk about taxes. One of the reasons we moved out of Geneva because our taxes were outrageous. We moved to Batavia, and they're still high, but with the association fees, they're still less than Geneva's. And I don't have to mow the lawn, and my landscaper is out there in the morning, so that's all paid for. And Dr. Munchler was here, the superintendent of District 304, and I'm sorry he left because this would be probably the only time he agrees with any comments that I've made. But even if you take your number of 30 students, which I think is very low, first of all, I want to say that there are some issues here, but for me personally, the low income issue is not an issue for me. My issue is my taxes and will they raise? So with District 304, if you have 30 students at $15,000 per student, which is the cost of educating a student in Geneva, that's almost $500,000 in additional cost to the school district. And then there'll be cost, of course, to the city for fire and police and whatever else needs to be done. And we have the assessor here for Geneva Township tonight. I would just encourage both Geneva and your council and any other councils that are talking about this to find out what the value of the building is going to be once it's fully occupied and what the total assessment is. And then you, of course, take that by the tax rates. And I don't know what the city of Geneva's tax rate is, but I know Geneva's is pretty high for the school district. So I would multiply that by the income that you think you're going to receive in taxes and versus what your expenditures are going to be for the building. and the same for Batavia and Geneva, talk together. You're right down the street. And if your expenses exceed what the costs are, or I'm sorry, if your expenses are more than what your revenue is going to be in from taxes, who is going to pay those taxes? We will. And I don't really want my taxes to be raised. So I think there's got to be a lot of financial planning done on this to make sure that your property tax revenue from the building is going to cover all of your costs throughout. And I know you don't want to talk about what people are going to go in there. But tonight you said that there's a lot of people in the Fox Valley that could possibly qualify. Some of those people may have been paying property taxes for the last 10 or 15 years. I really think that they should have the first opportunity to move into the building if they would like to. They've invested in the community for 10, 15, 20, 30 years maybe. And if they have an opportunity to go into affordable housing, I think they should have that opportunity before anyone outside the community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lynn Vasquez, and this is my roommate, Tequila Vasquez. Tequila Vasquez, I'm sorry, I'm up here on TV or whatever. So we're the faces of people that would qualify for this apartment. And benefit from it greatly. We're single mothers, both have 2 children in school, trying to make it ends meet, and both making about $25,000 a year. We are the people that would move into this place. We are the people that we would hope that you would welcome us in Geneva and to be around. I have family in Geneva that I might not be able to stay here because of finances, and this would make it possible for me to stay. I have lived around the area for over 30 years and just seen this building sitting here. I would love to see it come to life again, be something other than what it is now, which is just a standing building. So please, for the sake of us, single moms, vets, like they said, mentally disabled, those who are low income, have us have a safe place with good schools to have them grow up in. Thank you.
And just to add to that, I am a certified nursing assistant. I am currently separated from my husband, who I've been married to for 20 years. I have 2 daughters, and I work at Homestead, and I have done so for the past 9 years. Now, a facility like this will give me the opportunity. When Lynn first approached me about moving in together to share the burden that we both encountered, I was a little hesitant because I am African American, so I am the minority. And so for my children who attend Western Avenue, I was very afraid for them to attend the school because I didn't know how they would be accepted. So for a mother, that is your first concern, is that your children will be accepted. And that is my concern. That's my purpose for being here today, is that don't just look at this as if, from what I'm hearing, I don't want to go there because of legal reasons that maybe African Americans may move in when we hear the low income or the crime. Let's not focus on that. There will be a vetting process that will not allow some people to move in because of certain restrictions, records or credit or whatever. I'm just here to say that I would certainly benefit because Lynn, who's graduating Sunday, because we started this journey 2 years ago with the idea that we both will go to school. I'm currently in school pursuing my nursing degree, and she will be graduating with her bachelor's degree in social work. So we decided to help each other as we move forward, trying to rebuild our lives. So this would greatly benefit 2 single moms like ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, Susan, I think we've gone through the audience participation.
Oh, I didn't know if these people were waiting to speak or if they were just standing. Did you have something to say, sir? Come on up.
Rob Burns, B-Y-R-N-E-S. I represent a group that owns the campus immediately north of Campana on Route 31. 19 acres, almost 100,000 feet of office buildings that have been there for some time. I was fascinated by the discussion. I came here not sure whether I would say anything. I thought I maybe should come because the way the information seemed to come out recently seemed kind of not well publicized. This morning I found a 60-page addendum to Campana on the agenda for this meeting, 60 pages. It's a lot of reading even for a real estate person. However, so one of my comments was going to be, I hope you will not rush something like this through. My ears have been open. It doesn't seem like that's your intention. So I applaud you for that. To me, this is a really big thing, really big decision. The presentation about the building and the way it was going to be done seems pretty good. Pretty thorough and a lot of thought put into it, even though the plans we have seen so far are very preliminary. But it sounds like you intend to go through a number of steps, plan commission and so forth. It looked to me initially, and I think some other people, that because the zoning was mixed use, you could skip all that and not do that, which I thought would not be a good thing for anybody. The only other thing I wanted to say was, I'm not going to say anything about the quality of the development or the types of people or anything like that. The only thing I want to remind people is, I've owned that property, our group, for 16 years. I've looked at the Campana property. At one point, I was trying to sell the property to outside people. We had General Motors interested in it at one point, believe it or not. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere. That was about 12 or 13 years ago. I've been in the building many times. I'm very familiar with it. I suspect I know more about it than most people in this room. I was also watching and somewhat a participant in some of the past development efforts when Dreyer Medical Clinic was there. There were extensive meetings, different proposals. I came to at least a dozen meetings, it seemed like, here silently and watched. The only comment I want to make is the major issues surrounding the property have not changed. Nothing has changed. All the reasons that those developments never got anywhere before still exist. They range from, and I won't repeat them in great depth, but the danger of the intersection, the access points to Campana being too close to the light, KDOT, Kane County Department of Transportation, major issues with these things. They talked about moving the access point at least to Allen Drive. They wanted it further. Making left-hand turns, very difficult. Some would say dangerous. So the list of challenges are, some would have said, insurmountable. And let me put it this way, if it was an easy one, I would have made something happen by now. So it is not an easy one. So all I want to say is there's a lot of challenges, many of which have maybe been half mentioned tonight, but there's so much more to them that we already know about from the past, and I think it does require a really incredible effort for something to go there. Not just this use, but any use with a lot of cars and so forth is really, really risky and scary. So I hope something that can be worked out, I really do. I was pleased with what I heard tonight, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Susan?
So that'll conclude our public comment, and then does anyone on the council have anything they'd like to say? Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to note, there's a comment made about the public notice and whatnot that goes on as part of this process. And essentially, this process is the preliminary step that we go through as part of this. We did not have a notice requirement for this type of meeting until about 2 years ago. So this is kind of a new process for the city. So the people that got the notice, it was more than 8 people. There were a number of people that got it. But obviously, social media and everything else, everybody knows about it. They're all sitting here. But when we do get to the point, if the developer does decide to submit a formal application, We will have a public hearing process, whether that's going to be variances or our plan development. That has not been determined yet. That's going to be up to the developer as to what they're going to apply for. But then there will be a notice requirement. There'll be a notice in the newspaper. There will be notices again to the surrounding property owners. There will be signs on the property that are going to be required. Keep in mind that our notice requirement is bigger than 250 feet. Most towns have 250. I think Geneva just adopted 500 feet. Ours is actually 500 feet already. So people within 500 feet of the property would get a mailed notice regarding the property, any zoning hearing that comes up, to the Plan Commission. So I just wanted to have that understood so the audience understands our process and what we do as part of the development approval system.
Thanks, Scott. Now, this is something that we aren't taking any votes tonight. We aren't making any decisions tonight. This is really just an informational meeting for us to figure out what we'd like to see happen with this property and this particular development. From here,
I think we need to maybe go around
Yep.
and if any of the council members have got comments they'd like to make, so that the developer, at this point, the developer's heard everything we've heard.
Yep.
But he hasn't really heard maybe what our sentiment is at this point.
Exactly. And I also want to remind the council, because we've been through this before, that this is a non-binding decision.
Right.
What you say tonight, you don't have to stick to a week from now, 6 weeks from now, 6 years from now, just so that we're all clear on that, because we've had that confusion before. So, Drew, if you'd like to start. Sorry. You're the first chair.
Over there. All right. I liked I liked a fair amount of what I heard tonight. I think there's a definite need in the area for the type of housing that this would provide. There are challenges and concerns. Some of them have been brought up around parking and things like that. I'm very cognizant of. And I think we'll have to be careful with them and work through them. But I like this project better than I was expecting to coming into it.
That's what I was going to say. Probably came in with some preconceptions and was pleasantly pleased with the presentation. There are obviously some hurdles we need to overcome, but I am open to move ahead and learn more about it.
I kind of raised the question about the schools with the number of students. I'd really like to understand more about what you're actually seeing in your other developments of this nature, because it appears as though a 3-bedroom is a minimum of 4 people that would have to live in a 3-bedroom. I'm not sure if that's true in the Aurora housing. It's 3? 3 people, yeah. So it raises the risk that could be a significant impact on Geneva schools, and the parking is obviously a big issue that's come up already.
Paula?
I was pleasantly surprised by what I heard tonight. I like the historical preservation part of that building. I think that's an important building to save. I had some concerns about parking and of that intersection. That's my biggest concerns. But yeah, I'm very interested in what you have to say.
From my standpoint, the affordable housing aspect of it, I'm generally in support of affordable housing being available. And that building being in my ward, it is in my relative backyard. So I say that recognizing what I'm signing up for here. My biggest concerns are always going to be safety, especially where you have children. And I think this building in particular falls into a weird cross-township effort. I don't know what the etiquette would be to have discussions with the city of Geneva, or at least the schooling with Geneva, because this is a weird location for this type of a project. I don't think this, at least where we're talking about having children that are going to be going to a different township schools, should be entirely on us to decide. I don't know what the etiquette is for this, to be honest. I recognize the building is formerly Batavia property, but this feels like a bigger discussion, at least to me.
Marty?
This part of when we always talk about the heart attack test, I don't like that part of it because he's someone petitioning the government to have his say. And it shouldn't be on us to kill it right off the bat. That's for them to decide. If they want to spend the money to push it through as far as they want, that is entirely their choice. But the part that I like about it is we've got a massive building that's falling apart, that's on the largest corner for it affects both of our communities. So the way that I view it as an opportunity to address a problem, which is how do we do something with that building or nothing? The easiest thing for do is do nothing. And nothing ever moves forward by doing nothing. So you have to try to listen and figure out what is the best solution going forward for both of our communities. And doing that in a fully vetted process comes out with a better product in the end, because we weren't elected to just do nothing. We're here to solve some problems. And when the Homes for a Changing Region report that we've been dealing with for several years, we know what needs we have in this community. And to hear that we already have 25% of people that would qualify for this is aggravating, because we do hear from people, not just in our community, but in the entire state, I can't afford to live here anymore. Well, the I can't afford to live here anymore isn't who you think they are. They're us. And we can't afford to live here anymore. That's what we always have been talking about. There's lots of homes that we can buy that we can afford, but it's, to, I think, Bob's point, the taxes start killing us. But then there's more to it than that, that ultimately makes the entire area not affordable. So how do we address the larger issues and solve some problems?
Mike? You have nothing?
I'll leave it at that.
Got nothing? Okay, Dave?
I'd like to see it move forward. I'd like to see it go through the process. It's going to be a very, very long process. There's going to be very many open meetings, and I mean, they're all going to be open meetings, but public hearings and such. I think there's some good to it. There's some concerns to it. I think the one resident, Miss Valenti, I think her last name was, maybe said it best. Let's keep the conversation going. We need, there's a lot of answers, there's a lot of questions that we're going to all be asking for answers for. Not only the Geneva residents, but the Batavia residents, the school boards. And you got so many, like you said, or somebody said, there's so many hurdles to jump over. You've got state, federal, county, city of Geneva, city of Batavia. You got so many hurdles to climb over that whether this project, even if we all sat here tonight and said we'd want to see it done, doesn't mean it's going to get done. There's just so many other hurdles to jump over. So I think it's very worthwhile to continue the conversation and to see if we can make a very good project out of something that right now is falling apart.
Thanks, Dave. Scott?
I agree on a lot of levels. There's some great stuff that I've heard this evening. It's always encouraging to meet people that want to invest in our community. It's great. I am hung up on the logistics of the intersection. And I know that shouldn't be the one reason why something shouldn't go forward, but this just isn't just any intersection. And I think someone said it best, that there's projects that have died, many projects have died just from logistical issues of egress. And so that's something that I'd like to see this move forward, but it's going to have to be creative, and you're going to have to work with KDOT. And that intersection I've been witness to and have almost been in many collisions, and it just scares the snot out of me, to be honest with you, with the number of kids, the number of cars. I know you said that the traffic studies say there isn't going to be an increase. The smell test says otherwise. And that's fine, it's fine, but we can go forward, but I that really, really concerns me. It really, really does.
Alan?
I think this is an opportunity. I think this is an opportunity for both our communities. I think it's an opportunity for that intersection, to try to do something with that intersection. We were, reminded again that KDOT has control of that, and they have right-of-ways through there, and we could do something different with that intersection. A lot of people balked and cried when Geneva did the road diet and cut that down to 3 lanes. I, for one, think it's a great thing. I think that type of opportunity and that type of change could happen at that corner. It may be the time that we get to petition the state to actually reduce the speed limit on 31, which I think could make a difference.
And Fabian?
I think that there's a lot of things that we have to keep open minds to try to look at ideas. If Geneva's really afraid of it, I think we talk to the Batavia School District and the Geneva School District and have them sit down and see if they want to get rid of that property. If they don't want the students out of that property, I think Batavia could take them.
Good idea. Dan?
Given the report, the Homes for a Better Region, we're very familiar with it. We do know that the demand is there.
Mike.
I said after reviewing the Homes for a Better Region report, we do know that the demand is there. I'm pretty sure that this place will fill up very quickly. So I was really interested in what product was going to be shown to us tonight, and I was pleasantly surprised. The design is actually pretty inventive, and using the heart attack test, sure, I'd like to see this move forward and see what we actually do put together for a final product. Now, I live in the townhouses by the theater. I'm in the city of Batavia. My driveway is in Geneva Schools and Batavia Schools. My front of the driveway is in the Geneva Park District and the Geneva Library District, so I'm kind of one of those. So this property's in the 3rd Ward. It's in the Batavia School, or it's in Geneva Schools, so it would be irresponsible of us, obviously, to just cavalier, move forward and not at least have discussions with them. So I guess I would say if this is moving forward, I would certainly encourage staff to have discussions with the school district. But that said, I'd like to see more. Thank you.
See?
I'm hopeful. I liked what I heard tonight. I am also concerned about the access points for not just vehicles, but also for pedestrians and bikes. I think that's really important so that doesn't become an island. And it will help this particular community integrate better with the surrounding community.
Mike?
Yeah, I was very surprised by a lot of the comments tonight. I would like to see what happens, and I'd like to see us keep an open mind as far as the progression of this project.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, I guess I'll speak on behalf of conversations the staff and I have had. We are, obviously we've raised some issues as it regards to the expansion of the sidewalk, the parking issue, about granting variances to parking. I think we have some problems with that. And we also, I think the fire department has raised some issues, and of course, it was said tonight they're going to replace the entire sprinkler system in the building, so that may get us over the big hump there. I did have one opportunity to have a conversation with the superintendent of schools in Geneva, and he specifically mentioned their interest in us applying the land cash fees that Geneva has to this building, because this would be a total new residential project in the community of Geneva for their school district. So there's a lot of money floating around in kind of extra things here that the developer, I think, has to come to grips with as he proceeds along with his discussions.
Thank you. And I'm last. I was, very encouraged to see the project as presented. Having been on historic preservation, I have been in the building. I have seen the deterioration. I know that it is a huge expense for the current owners to try to keep it up to some level of not falling down around them. I think that, we've all raised issues about it becoming an island, not having access, not having sidewalks, not having egress, which are things that I know are probably no surprise to you. And so I think that, you've heard from us tonight, and you can make a decision whether or not this is something that you want to pursue. It sounds like we're open to learning more. And so I think that is as much direction as we can give you. And I'm sure that you saw that there were people from the Geneva School District offices, central office here tonight. And so they're, of course, paying very close attention to this too. So that's all that we really have to say. Anything else, Dave, that you want to add, or?
No, I don't have anything else to add other than to thank everybody for coming tonight and participating. And there'll be, if they do decide to move forward, which would be something that would be put on our website as far as information, so everybody knows what's going on. There'll be plenty of opportunity for more public hearings and more public comment. I thank the developer. As I said, I thank everybody for participation, and that'll conclude this part of our initial land use plan item, and we'll take about a 3-minute recess so everybody can leave that doesn't want to stick around, and then we'll go on with the rest of our meeting.
Thank you all for your time.
A 3-hour recess?
If anyone would like to put their name on the email list, I'll leave that up here, and
Saw
then
his head.
feel free to take a card as well.
And then he backed out. Kept himself there.
I think, it's funny because I wanted to ask the just what he's afraid of with the kids. Me too. Yeah.
Well, that is.
In the park.
Right turn lane there. And different with it, straighten it out.
No, I've been in it, and I've been part of many discussions, including developers. I mean, it's about dealing with that, like brainstorming over the years. So.
I love the way the type of sales to your I was pissed.
I just, nobody's.
If you can't embrace, it's different than you. You can't see something different than you.
How the real world is, child. And so, feeling the family. Yeah.
Interim church in Charleston. And I went to a bunch of them, and I knew coming up, and you know what, I'm not going to them. I don't want any, I was up there. Yeah, we treat pigs. Well, we don't.
Yeah, exactly. Thought it was like, it turned out they were people. For me,
Well, I said to Jonathan, I guess he seemed like real brave.
They were good.
that woman was way on.
Like on his Facebook page.
That's huge. And it was.
It is. He's not made it through life. So there's all.
No, he just signed as a free agent. You know? When that's
We're
like,
But it's signed a contract to actually play.
He's on
the trust was great.
Oh, right.
Okay, so he's got a shirt. Until he gets cut.
No example pay.
One Washington.
Yes.
He's not that big compared to the rest of the guys.
Were you talking about Cole?
Cole, yeah.
He's big, but he's not massive. He made it pretty far. Yeah,
How
but
many of us here made a training camp?
He's
Just
gotta
wait till
make
next
it
year
through all
when the
this,
next
though.
Batavia.
Let's end it.
From Michigan.
If we could, you know, you can all take your conversations out in the hallway. That would be wonderful, so we could continue our meeting. Thank you.
Amazingly enough, we have to, you know, like, work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Two people left. Okay, we're going to move on to our next item, which is item 10, project status. City Administrator?
Well, I don't have too much for project status beyond what I shared yesterday, but, you know, just to reiterate that we are going to have a follow-up meeting with our branding consultants next week. And then also that really encourage anybody who has the time to make it tomorrow from 1:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. here in council chambers will be the retirement celebration for Chief Shira, and I'm sure that he would love to see as many of you there as possible.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 11, others. Anybody have an other they want to bring up?
Now that everyone's gone, I move that we approve the project.
You're a funny guy, Dan Chanzit.
Okay, does anybody have any others?
Too soon?
Too soon.
All right, let's move on then to the next item, which is the change in the agenda, which is item 11A. It's an executive session for the purpose of property acquisition. I do need a motion to do that.
And we need to
Motion by
clear out,
Chanzik, what?
we need to clear out the,
Right, we got to have a motion first. Motion by Chanzik, second by
second.
Mueller. All in, roll call, please.
Rosado?
Here.
Atack?
Here.
Stark?
Here.
Chanzit?
We're going to go into executive session.
Yes, we are.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Oh, yeah. It's here when we come out.
Wolf?
Aye.
Salvati?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Callahan?
Aye.
Meitzler?
Aye.
Mueller? Aye. Ewer?
Aye.
Saron?
Aye.
And McFadden?
Aye.
Okay, we'll take a couple minutes while we turn off the TV. There won't be any action coming out of this after the executive session, so no need for reporters or anybody to stick around. We'll just take a couple minutes while we change everything around. Thank you.